I did not come to the stars seeking glory. I came because Earth was dying quietly, politely, the way old men fade in hospital beds. The oceans were tired, the skies were thin, and every government on the planet agreed on only one thing. If we did not find allies beyond our world, humanity would fade within 2 centuries. That was why I stood on the polished obsidian floor of the Hall of Crowns, surrounded by beings who looked nothing like me. The ceiling stretched upward into a dome of living crystal, swirling with slow-moving galaxies. 1,000 alien nobles watched from hovering platforms, their eyes gleaming like gemstones or burning like coals. The air smelled of metal and sweet incense. At the center of it all sat Queen Zalara of the Varith Empire. She was tall, regal, and terrifyingly calm. Her skin shimmered like moonlight on dark water. For silver tendrils flowed from the back of her head instead of hair, moving as if stirred by invisible tides. Her eyes were deep violet voids, endless and unreadable. A translator collar circled my neck, pulsing softly with blue light. It rendered her alien speech into English inside my mind. "Human envoy," she said, voice resonating through my skull. "You stand before the sovereign throne. Kneel and present your species in humility." Every muscle in my body locked. I knew the protocol. The Galactic Concord required new species to kneel before the ruling monarch of the sector. It was symbolic, my instructors had said. Harmless tradition. But tradition, I had learned, was how empires disguise chains. I thought of Earth's fragile cities. The crowded refugee domes. The children wearing oxygen masks on playgrounds. If I knelt, humanity would begin its relationship with the galaxy as a subject race. I exhaled slowly and did not kneel. A gasp rippled through the chamber. Metallic limbs clattered. Bioluminescent crests flashed warning colors. Royal guards stepped forward, their spear-like weapons humming with energy. Queen Zalara raised one slender hand. The guards froze instantly. The hall fell silent again. I swallowed. "Your Majesty," I said, forcing my voice steady, "I come representing a species seeking partnership, not submission. Humanity bows to no throne." My heart hammered like a war drum. I knew I might die for those words. But if I died, at least Earth's dignity died unbroken. For a long moment, the Queen stared. Then she smiled. It was not cruel, not mocking. It was intrigued. "How unusual," she murmured. "Every species kneels. Even conquerors bow before me. Yet a fragile world, dying and desperate, sends an envoy who refuses." Her tendrils coiled thoughtfully. "What is your name, human?" "Armada," I said. "A name carried by wind," she mused. "Armada, you stand defiant in the Hall of Crowns. Do you understand what you risk?" "I do," I said. "But my world has knelt too many times before forces it did not understand. We will not begin our future that way." Another long silence. Then Queen Zalara stood. When she rose, the entire chamber lowered themselves in synchronized reverence. Every noble bowed. Every guard lowered their weapon. Only I remained upright, because no one had told me to bow. She descended the steps of her throne, each movement fluid and precise. When she reached me, she stood so close I could see faint constellations moving beneath her translucent skin. "You interest me, Armada," she said softly. "And in the Varith Empire, interest from the Queen is never casual." I felt cold despite the warm air. "What does that mean?" "It means," she said, turning to the gathered assembly, "that the right of choosing will be invoked." A murmur swept through the crowd. Some nobles recoiled. Others watched with sharp curiosity. The right has not been invoked in 5 centuries, a tall insectoid lord protested. The queen cannot. I am the throne, Zalara said. The protest died instantly. She looked back at me. By ancient law, when a foreign being stands before the throne without fear, pride, or submission, the queen may choose them as consort, to bind their people to ours not by conquest, but by union. My stomach dropped. You want marriage, I said carefully. Not want, she corrected. I am considering. I almost laughed. Your Majesty, I am human. My species breathes poison to your lungs. My lifespan is a fraction of yours. I am unworthy of your royal customs. She leaned close, her voice a whisper inside my thoughts. You refuse to kneel before absolute power. That is worth more than crowns. Before I could reply, guards surrounded me gently but firmly. Until the rite concludes, she said, you will remain within the palace. Not as prisoner, as guest. I was escorted from the hall, my mind spinning. I had come seeking a treaty. Instead, I had become a candidate for an alien queen's hand. The palace of shifting light became my world. Days passed, or what passed for days beneath artificial suns. I was given chambers carved from crystal that hummed with quiet energy. Food was synthesized to suit human biology. Servants watched respectfully from a distance, never speaking unless spoken to. And always I felt eyes on me. The nobles of the empire wished to know who I was. Some approached with thinly veiled hostility, others with curiosity. A reptilian scholar tested my knowledge of politics. A floating gas creature probed my understanding of physics. A crystalline philosopher asked me questions about human art, love, and mortality. Every encounter felt like an examination. At night, I lay awake staring at the glowing ceiling, wondering if Earth even knew what had happened. No messages had been allowed in or out. The Queen had said the rite must conclude first. On the 7th day, Queen Zalara visited my chambers. She dismissed her guards and stood by the window, gazing at the artificial stars swirling beyond the palace dome. You wonder why I invoked the rite, she said. Yes, I admitted. She turned toward me. The Varith Empire spans 8 star systems. We have known war, rebellion, decay. Long ago, our queens chose consorts from conquered worlds to secure loyalty. But conquest breeds resentment. Resentment breeds collapse. She walked slowly around the room, tendrils flowing like water. I seek something different. A species that stands beside us, not beneath us. A voice that challenges mine, not obeys it. I shook my head. Your Majesty, I am only one man. No, she said. You are a symbol. You refuse to kneel. Your people may yet stand. I took a breath. If I accepted this union, what happens to Earth? Earth becomes protected territory of the Varith throne, she said. Your dying world will receive our technology, our resources, our guardianship. No empire will touch it. No famine will reach it. No extinction will claim it. The temptation was enormous. Salvation for my species in exchange for my life. But I had to know the cost. And humanity's freedom? I asked. She met my gaze. Your world will govern itself, but its fate will be tied to mine. If the throne falls, Earth falls with it. If the throne rises, Earth rises. A partnership, not subjugation, but a binding of destinies. I looked away. You would choose a stranger to reshape your empire. I would choose the one who stood unafraid before me, she said simply. Silence stretched between us. Then she said, tomorrow, the rite concludes. Before the assembly, you will speak your answer. And with that, she left. I did not sleep. I thought of my home, the oxygen-poor skies, the dust storms, the tired eyes of children in crowded shelters. I thought of my mission briefings, the warnings, the protocols. None of them had prepared me for this. At dawn, guards arrived. They dressed me in a robe woven with silver threads that shimmered like starlight. I was led through grand corridors toward the Hall of Crowns once more. When the doors opened, the entire empire seemed gathered there. Queen Zalara waited at her throne, radiant and calm. "Armen Vale," she announced, "you have been offered the right of choosing. Before the throne and the empire, you will answer." I stepped forward. Thousands of eyes watched me. My translator collar pulsed softly. Queen Zalara extended her hand. "If you accept," she said, "stand beside me, and our destinies will unite. If you refuse, you will return to your world with safe passage, but Earth will stand alone in a hostile galaxy." The weight of every human life pressed upon my shoulders. I took one slow breath and said, "I accept on one condition." A shock passed through the chamber. Queen Zalara's tendrils stilled. "Speak." "If I stand beside you," I said, "I do so as equal partner. I will not kneel. Not today. Not ever. Not to you. Not to your empire. If Earth stands with the Varith, it stands as ally, not subject, not ornament, not possession." Murmurs rose. Angry. Alarmed. Some nobles shouted protests. Guards tightened their grip on weapons. Queen Zalara raised her hand. Silence fell. She stepped down from her throne again and walked until she stood before me. Slowly, deliberately, she lowered herself and knelt. The Hall of Crowns erupted in stunned gasps. No one in recorded Varith history had ever seen their queen kneel. She lifted her gaze to meet mine. "Then let it be written," she said, "that on this day the throne chose not a servant, but a partner." She rose. "Armen Vale, by right and will, you are consort of the Varith throne, and humanity stands beside us, not beneath us." A wave of energy pulsed through the hall as ancient laws activated. The right was sealed. I stood frozen, barely breathing. I had refused to kneel, and the queen had chosen me anyway. Years passed. Earth bloomed again. Skies cleared under new atmospheric towers. Oceans stabilized. Children played without masks. Human cities rose alongside alien architecture, woven with crystal and living light. I walked palace halls beside Queen Zalara, not as ornament, but advisor. Sometimes challenger, sometimes comfort. The nobles learned that the consort from Earth did not bow. And slowly, they learned to stand straighter themselves. Empires across the galaxy watched the Varith throne carefully now. A new force had risen, one that ruled not through fear alone, but through unity. Sometimes, in quiet moments, I stood at the palace window and watched stars swirl across the artificial sky. I thought of the day I refused to kneel, of how close death had stood, of how one sentence had changed the fate of two civilizations. Queen Zalara would stand beside me, silent, regal, endless. "You regret?" she asked once. I smiled faintly. "No," I said. "I refused to kneel." And the universe stood up with me. And somewhere across the galaxy, a once-dying world breathed freely again. The celebration lasted 7 cycles. In the capital world of Varith, entire sky rivers of light flowed above the palace, forming symbols of unity that could be seen from orbit. Humans and alien species stood together beneath shimmering domes. Music from 100 civilizations blended into one living harmony. No one had ever witnessed an empire celebrate a union not born of conquest. But peace, I learned, is never simply gifted. It must be defended. On the 8th cycle, the warning arrived. A fleet, massive, predatory, ancient, entered the outer system. The Car Dominion, an empire that believed all thrones existed only to be seized. They had ruled half the galaxy through annihilation, and they did not recognize alliances. Only chains. Their message echoed through every communication channel. Submit the throne of Vareth, or we will reduce the system to ash. The nobles panicked. Generals demanded immediate war preparation. Advisors argued evacuation strategies. The palace shook with fear. I stood beside Queen Zalara on the balcony, overlooking the capital spires. The artificial stars above us flickered as defensive grids activated. They test us, she said quietly. I nodded. Then we answer.
She turned to me.
Many will expect you to kneel now, to ask me to protect your world alone. I looked out toward the distant shimmer of the incoming fleet. If I kneel now, everything we built collapses. Her tendrils stirred, almost fondly. Then speak, consort of Earth. We entered the Hall of Crowns together. For the first time in Vareth history, the Queen did not sit upon the throne. She stood beside me at its base. Equal height, equal stance. I stepped forward and activated the universal broadcast. My voice carried across the system, translated into 1,000 tongues. To the Car Dominion, I said, you demand submission. We refuse. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. I continued. Once my species came here dying.
Weak. Desperate.
We might have knelt. We might have begged. But today, Earth stands alive again. And we stand with the Vareth not as subjects, but as allies. If you wish this throne, you will have to take it from 2 civilizations united. The transmission ended. Silence followed. Then Queen Zalara raised her hand and placed it over her heart, the ancient Vareth gesture of oath. Let it be known, she said, voice ringing like metal on crystal, that the throne does not bow to tyrants. We rise. Across the hall, every noble mirrored the gesture. Across the planet, every citizen did the same. Across Earth, humanity watched the broadcast, and for the first time in its history, stood not in fear of the stars, but in defiance of them. The battle that followed lasted 1 brutal day. Human-engineered atmospheric cannons joined Vareth star lances. Earth pilots flew beside alien wing fighters. Shields burned. Space ignited. Darkness itself trembled. And when the final Car flagship shattered into drifting embers, the galaxy understood a new truth. 2 species, bound not by chains but by choice, had turned back an empire of conquest. Later, in the quiet after victory, I stood again at the palace window. Queen Zalara joined me, silent as starlight. You did not kneel, she said, even when destruction loomed. I smiled. I already refused once. I won't start now. For the first time, her laughter chimed, soft, alien, beautiful. Below us, worlds healed. Above us, stars waited. And somewhere in the vast dark, whispers spread of a throne where no one bowed, where alliances were forged not by fear, but by courage. A throne where a human once stood defiant and changed the fate of the galaxy with a single refusal.